Number 10. King Edward VIII. Directly after his father died in 1936, King Edward VIII took the throne, right? That's pretty normal. But the tides quickly turned when, less than a year later, he renounced his position. Now, this was of course a huge scandal right off the bat. This is not something that's taken lightly in the royal family. Turns out the woman responsible for stealing his heart was that of Wallis Simpson, America's socialite who had already been divorced once before and was at this point working through her second divorce. So you can only imagine how everybody reacted at that point, right? Oh, how dare she? His proposal to Simpson, of course, caused social and political backlash. The Church of England wasn't so chill with Edward marrying someone who had already been divorced. Yeah, they're not really okay with that. So Edward was forced to abdicate. Yeah, he had to, right, for love. Edward and Simpson then tied the knot in 1937, and they stayed together until Edward's death much later in 1972. Sliding into royal DMs right off the hop. Okay, we're in for a treat. Number 9. Dark predictions. Of course, in recent years, the royal family has seen a change that many didn't really expect. When Harry and Meghan chose to renounce their royalty status, speculation began that this could be the beginning of the end for the monarchy. People only fueled their fire with questions, and also, somebody may have called it. Yeah, Nostradamus, he may have predicted this entire event. One of his predictions literally reads, "At the end of the war, the great powers change. Near the coast are born 3 beautiful children. They will ruin the town when they come of age, they will change the kingdom, and they will not see it grow anymore." Now, Harry is only one of 2 children, so I'm not sure if the, quote was talking about him and his siblings, or if it has more to do so with some other royal family members, but either way, there's some people who take Nostradamus' words very, very seriously out there, so I had to include it. Maybe there's something there, I don't know, maybe there's something we haven't quite breaking down yet. That's why we need National Treasure 3, maybe this is the plot. Number 8, King Henry II. While we're on the topic of him, could Nostradamus have actually predicted the death of King Henry II? Because if he did, that's pretty curious, I'd say. Never used the word curious in my life, but I'm like, you know what, that's curious. King Henry II was actually a personal acquaintance of the prophet himself. That'd be kind of cool, being friends with Nostradamus. I'd be like, hey, how does Game of Thrones end? Please. While at one point in history, Nostradamus was seen addressing King Henry II as the most invincible King Henry of France, unfortunately, Henry proved to be quite vincible when he met his gruesome death, might I add, at age 40. Yeah, in the summer of 1559, not a great time. A terrible jousting accident went wrong and it left the king passing away shortly after from sepsis. This is a terrible story, but I have to explain because, it's history and, well, that's what we're here for. The jousting accident saw the king having splinters driven into his eye and then his skull as well by one of his young soldiers. And the Nostradamus quote reads, "The young lion will overcome the older one. It says he will pierce his eyes through a golden cage." Okay, already we're a little bit spooky. "And that 2 wounds will ensure a cruel death." So I'm not saying he predicted it, I'm just saying, kind of nailed it.
Number 7. The light of my life. Emperor Nero was straight up just not a cool guy. This whole list could be about him, but I'm here to make you laugh, not horrify you with the horrors of Pax Romana. Nero, like most emperors, was very wealthy, the kind of wealth that only people who shop at Whole Foods can understand. As it turns out, there was a fire in Rome at the time. Burned for a long time, pretty big deal. Who started the fire? No one really knows, even though Nero himself might be a suspect. However, it would be really easy to get rid of a group of people you don't like if you blame it on them. So it was blamed on the hot new religion at the time, you gotta love them, Christians, except Nero didn't, and he was kind of egotistical, so in order to punish these scapegoated Christians, he had them set ablaze. So there was more light in his garden, so to speak, or that's what is said, at least. I know sometimes we can all disagree with our faith, but lighting each other on fire is not the answer. Mom always said if you have nothing nice to say, then don't light people on fire.
Okay, Mom.
Number 6. Not so Hercules. Commodus was like many other emperors in thinking that he was very close to the gods, but Commodus thought he was a Greek god, and reincarnated Hercules to be exact. So much so that he would often take up a role as a gladiator, which a lot of Romans thought was scandalous as a leader. A leader shouldn't be dealing with the barbarians at our gates and other lands that were persecuting and invading and taking over, rather than performing in blood sports. It was thought that this was below the office of the emperor. Rumors began to stir that because of his love for the arena, he may not be the royal bloodline claimed to be. When in the arena, his adversaries always surrendered, so he always won. In return, he wouldn't kill them, to be fair, just scarred them, as it was seen to be a good thing to be bested by the Emperor and then to leave with a mark. Sure, we'll go with that. Apparently, they also brought animals in for him to slaughter in the arena for entertainment. Eventually, people had enough of him wasting time and money playing gladiator games, and he was strangled by his coach. Oh, hey coach, I'm ready for the next match. How you doing? Hey, why are you looking at me like that, man? What's wrong? And what's that robe for? Number 5, last best hope. Romulus Augustulus was the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire. History gets kind of crazy after this point, but let's be real, what's more scandalous than being the last ruler of your empire? Could he have saved it? Would the world have looked different if he did? Truth be told, not a lot of records survived his reign, so we don't really know. Perhaps it's because he didn't have much time to write things down. Or maybe because he was still a minor when he inherited the failing Roman Empire. Or really it was because Rome's worst nightmare had come true. The barbarians at the gates had taken over Rome. The German barbarian general Odoacer took over and claimed himself to be the king of Italy, which ushered in the end of the Great Western Roman Empire. Talk about scandal. Number 4, excess, excess, excess. Emperor Elagabalus is what I think of when I think of a Roman emperor. Someone who is pampered in a time where most people don't have access to really anything easily. Eating grapes off the vine, bottles of wine, and your servants are looking fine. Alright, alright, alright. His life of decadence was also matched with the classic level of unaliving those who oppose you, or rather groups that you feel need to be persecuted. Even more scandalous than that is the question of his sexuality. Oh. While being debated by historians today, there are rumors that the decadent emperor may have been having a relationship with his male chariot driver. There's also rumors of the emperor wearing women's clothes. Very scandalous indeed, oh handsome emperor.
Number 3, Prince Harry costume party. YouTube isn't a fan of some words, specifically one word that rhymes with Yahtzee, and it goes deep with history, as you could assume what I'm talking about. But with this being one of the biggest scandals, I have to bring it up, right? The Duke was always referred to as a bad boy, right? He was the bad royal, the bad boyle royal. I don't know, I'm trying new shit here. But just how deep did these incidents cut? Well, before he settled down with Meghan in 2018, Harry had to issue a public apology back in 2005 because, whoops, somebody got photos from a costume party, and a few of them were in poor taste. Did the royal dress up as the Beast from Beauty and the Beast? No, he did not. Did he dress up like a witch? Like a little witch, maybe with a nice witch broom? No, none of that either. No, photos leaked of him wearing World War II German soldier gear. Yeah, I can't say too much, but it was even equipped with an armband, a very bad armband. Again, I can't say too much, nor will YouTube allow us to show too much, but you understand what I'm trying to say. You remember. It was poor taste. He could have dressed up in any way he wanted. He's a literal prince. And he does this? It's off-putting. Harry said afterwards, and I quote, "I am very sorry if I caused any offense or embarrassment to anyone. It was a poor choice of costume and I apologize." End quote. Nice, right from the heart. That's good. Really goes deep with the royal history. We love it. Number 2, Vegas getaway. Nice, roll those dice. It's one thing to party like a rock star, but to party like a prince? What does that even mean? I gotta keep this Prince Harry train going because, well, now I'm mad at him, but there's even more photos from history that show what was really going down in the royal family, His priorities, dare I say. After that party incident, just 7 years later, scandalous photos emerged from Harry's Las Vegas trip. Yeah, I had a little boys' night, it seems. It turns out what happens in Vegas may just leak online for your entire family to see, and your grandmother. That's probably not a great time. These scandalous pics were taken during a strip pool game. Lovely, we like that. Make sure you call the right pocket while you're not wearing any. The scandal actually prompted St. James Palace to contact the Press Complaints Commission before the snaps even made their way to British tabloids. Yeah, they knew right off the bat they were fucked. They're like, can we call them? Can we send a pigeon? What's the fastest? And finally, number 1, Boy Jones and other attempts. Okay, being the queen and all in history, a security team is always needed, obviously. And during her reign, specifically Queen Victoria, there were multiple attempts to harm the young queen. First attack was in 1840. It was an 18-year-old man named Edward Oxford, and he fired towards the Queen's carriage. When Edward was accused of high treason, of course, afterwards, he was actually found not guilty due to, you guessed it, insanity. A couple years later, in 1842, it happened again. This time, 2 men fired at her, both also missed. In 1849, her carriage was attacked by William Hamilton. In 1850, as the carriage was passing the gates of Buckingham Palace, Robert Pate, a retired soldier, might I add, ran up and hit her with his cane. Victoria was okay, luckily, but of course she was shook. Then these incidents kept occurring again in 1842, 1849, and 1872. Attempt after attempt after attempt. But then things got a little worse and, dare I say, a little bit more weird. If you haven't heard of Boy Jones or anything that happened there, I saved it for last because it's so horribly creepy. A teenager stalked the Queen back in 1838 until 1841, and his name was Edward Jones. Edward Boy Jones. This guy somehow managed to break into Buckingham Palace more than once, right? Before Assassin's Creed came out, no idea how we thought of this. Guy just knows a route in, and he would break in and would hide under the Queen's sofa. That was his go-to spot. Or he would sometimes just sit on her throne. And one of the worst things ever, sometimes he would go through her drawers. He would go through the Queen's drawers. That's so gross. What? Like that's gross. He would steal her clothes until eventually, and thankfully, he got caught. Kicking off the list at number 10, Election Day. Known as the most corrupt pope in the history of the Catholic Church, Rodrigo Borgia, even before he became the big talk of the town, he bribed his way to get there. Yeah, shocker. They were Spanish-speaking nobles who rose to their power all over the Italian peninsula during the Renaissance. And it certainly helped when Rodrigo's uncle, Alfonso de Borgia, became Pope Calixtus III come 1455. They say it's all about who you know, and that was the case for these relatives. He was the first ever pope in history to acknowledge his children, which, like many things on this list, was super controversial at the time. But it only gets better.
Number 9. Lions, tigers, mistresses, and children. So as far as I learned in church, priests, especially the Pope, weren't allowed to have children because there was this whole chastity thing. I don't know. However, back in the Borgia's time, it was actually quite common for popes to have mistresses and father children. However, it wasn't acknowledged, and for the most part, it was hidden. Pope Alexander made the bold choice of not only acknowledging his children, but spoiling them. The same for his mistresses. Everyone knew. He fathered 4 children with a Roman noblewoman named Venosa Catanei, Geoffrey, Juan, and most famously Cesare and Lucrezia Borgia. He did everything he could to advance their careers, marrying them off to rich relations, and even made Cesare head of the military. Their complicated careers didn't stray far from the limelight, adding even more to their illustrious careers of the Borgias.
Number 8. Familiar face. The face of Jesus Christ has appeared in the most bizarre places. Most of the time, it's toast. I don't know why, it's always a toast. No idea why, but European depictions of Jesus Christ, believe it or not, are based off Cesare Borgia's face. Imagine somebody using your face for the Lord's. It's kind of cool. Also, is this okay? Are people mad? What happened here? That's how much power this guy had. When his father became Pope Alexander VI in 1471, Cesare, at just age 15, was made into a bishop, and then 3 years later, a cardinal. One of the biggest scandals still to this day is that Jesus' early appearance is based off the young Borgia. The claim comes from novelist Alexandre Dumas, who apparently heard it from biblical theorists. Apparently Jesus was depicted as a non-European because he was Jewish, but the Borgia Pope, our madman, decided to make a more European-looking Jesus, so he used his illegitimate son Cesare as their new model. Number 7. A fateful turn of events. Queen Victoria. Her reign began back in 1837 and it lasted until the Queen's death in 1901. Now, at just age 18, Alexandrina Victoria had to rise up to the throne. Had to, right? All these cases, it's like, yeah, they have to do this. She was born, of course, on May 24th, 1819, and Queen Victoria was actually 5th in line when she was born, nowhere near the throne. So right off the bat, it was actually highly unlikely that she would ever see the crown. But one by one, all of her family members began passing away fast. In 4 years, 3 of Victoria's cousins passed away, and then her father and her grandfather both died 1 week apart from one another. So on one hand, obviously it's sad, it's tragic, everyone's dealing with loss so fast. But on the other hand, by the time 1830 rolled around, Victoria was only 11 years old, and already she was next up to bat for the throne at 11. Imagine, that's like some ancient Egypt. Number 6, the Great Irish Famine. The Great Irish Famine took out many people. Back in 1845, potato crop that a lot of the Irish population relied on were suddenly no longer available. See, a group of microorganisms wiped them out, and in result, around 1 million folks died or had to leave. Now, it was draconian law and British ruling at this point that made the exported food hard to reach people. That's where things stopped. This famine led to Irish independence, of course, and anti-union movements, and the show Victoria pulled back 0 punches in 2017, where an episode showed the true happenings behind the Great Irish Famine and the role that Queen Victoria played in coming to the aid of her then subjects. It was the death of at least 1 million people. This was a very dark 7 years in Irish history. Historian Christine Keneally spoke out and says, quote, "There is no evidence that she had any real compassion for the Irish people in any way." Yikes. That's a historian saying that. That's how you know. Number 5, Meghan Markle, solo strut. Okay, back in May 2018, we all set our alarms, we woke up early, and we all watched the royal wedding, right? We sipped our tea in our pajamas and we pretended like we were there, right? Just watching, along with the other billions of people online. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, his new Duchess. At the historic wedding, Thomas Markle was just a no-show. Yeah, Meghan has walked down that aisle by herself in front of 1 billion people, watching at home or streaming it, and it was thought at the time that this was because of Thomas's health. See, right before the wedding, Thomas suffered a heart attack, right? Just days before, so of course nobody was upset. It was almost expected for him not to show up. But cut to a year later, we began talking again. Thomas and the Duchess are now not close, it seems. Thomas even spoke out against his own daughter at one point. There was a huge scandal where Meghan even spoke to Oprah, like Oprah and that big tell-all, and Meghan actually said to her father, "If you tell me the truth about working with paparazzi, we can help." And he wasn't able to do that, and for me, has really resonated, especially now as a mother, end quote. So yeah, they're not talking, I guess, anymore, which more than fair. If my dad was working with the paparazzi, showing them private letters, I'd be a little pissed too. There's no way though, the guy can't even unlock his email, let alone sending one? No way. Number 4, Prince Charles and Princess Diana's divorce. Prince Charles, the oldest son of the Queen, straight up admitted to having an affair with Camilla Parker before his divorce from his first wife, of course, Princess Diana. Imagine having this is crazy. A princess? You cheated on a princess? That's insane. So in turn, Princess Diana addressed the relationship and what's happening during, that famous 1995 interview with BBC. She couldn't have said it better, if I'm being honest. Diana said herself, quote, "Well, there's 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." Yeah, end quote. There's no better way of putting it, I think. It's a pretty baller way of saying it. I don't know. I haven't said baller in like 13 years, but I'm like, you know what? That's a baller move. It's pretty gangster. Diana also said she was in love with riding instructor Major James Hewitt during her marriage to Charles, so everybody was busy looking at their directions, it seems. Diana and Charles divorced in 1996, only 1 year before her tragic car accident. Now later in 2005, Charles ended up marrying Camilla. Has anyone seen Spencer? Kristen Stewart looked great in that movie, and now I want to watch it. Is it worth the watch? Let me know in the comments. I didn't see it go to theaters or anything. It kind of snuck by me. I was sleeping on all the good ones.
Number 3, Lucrezia Borgia. Oh boy, where do we start with this one? The life of this woman reads like a damn 15th century opera. Dramatic, over the top, and tragic. Lucrezia's first marriage was a messy one, as she was very much used as a pawn. It was a political match between Giovanni Sforza, whom she married when she was just 13, and he was 26, and we know that didn't end well. Her father chose to annul the marriage when a more lucrative match appeared. He declared that he was impotent in an attempt to preserve his daughter's chastity, and the marriage was annulled. However, at the time, she was 6 months pregnant with someone's baby. Not Giovanni's though. This scandal Alexander covered up only to reveal the child 3 years later. Her second husband, Alfonso, she apparently loved dearly before he was mysteriously strangled to death in his sleep. But beyond her love life, Lucrezia was rumored to be an infamous poisoner. It was alleged that she wore a hollow ring that she would fill with poison and use at her leisure. She was even implicated in Juan's death. A lot of rumors, a lot of drama, the scandal seemed never ending with Lucrezia Borgia.
Number 2, too cool for school. We all know somebody who went to a private school later on in their life and then they started to change a little. Maybe they're doing more hair flips, they start saying words like whomst, stuff like that. Well, when Rachel said the scandals with Lucrezia are never ending, she was onto something, of course. Young Lucrezia was given the best education. Now, today's standards, when you have a family this high up, that's not surprising. But back in those days, young girls were dependent on convents for their education. So nuns would teach them godly obedience, that's the whole point. Lucrezia's education was deemed a degenerate one. Oh, you went to Harvard? Wow, what a degenerate. How could you? Hashtag the Lord.
Number 1, man. What the heck? Banquet of chestnuts. Whatever euphemism popped into your head right now is probably not far off, so just put it in the comments because I want to see what one's the best. Here at number 1 we have the Banquet of Chestnuts, and no, I'm not talking about chestnuts roasting on an open fire unless you're into that. The Banquet of Chestnuts was the most famous Halloween party in the history of the world. Basically what went down was a giant orgy. October 30th, 1501, a massive banquet was organized in the papal palace of all places, which included nobility and senior officials of the Catholic Church. But workers of the night and nude entertainment were invited as well, and for the rest of the night, vows of chastity were out the window. They basically played sexy party games. Even the Pope participated. Although it sounds too fantastic to be true, it was legitimized by a first-hand written account. It was hosted by Pope Alexander VI and his son Cesare Borgia. Two peas in a pod. The banquet was decadent, full with food and delicacies of irresistible quality, along with 50 of Rome's finest lustful entertainers. This even gave insight to the duplicitous and flawed nature of religious authority of the time, preaching one manner of life to the masses and behaving the complete opposite behind closed doors.
Number 10. The blade, the wife, and the horse? If you love something, you gotta let it go. Or how about parading your naked wife in front of your friends in the mighty Roman military? Emperor Caligula was so impressed with his wife's beauty, he just thought he had to share it, even though apparently she wasn't that attractive, and already had children with another man. Scandalous. If she had wheels, she'd be the town bike, if you know what I'm saying. As if displaying your wife's gratuitous curves isn't scandalous enough, apparently he would use very real threats as a strange way of flirting. Clearly this was a dude who's got some issues. Like for example, the one time he wanted to humiliate the Roman Senate by claiming to make his horse a consul. Although he didn't actually go through with it. Still though, this one's all sixes and nines, innit? This may have been related to a brothel caught disease. He might have had syphilis, I'm just saying. Number 9. No grain. Maximinus Thrax was like most Roman emperors. Seized power when he wanted, seized land when he wanted, pretty much did whatever he wanted. Strangely enough, however, he cut subsidies for grain. This was one of the many tactics to help up cover for increased taxes. Taxes that were imposed because he had doubled the pay of the military during constant military action. That's a lot of coins needed. Eventually the people had had enough. And ironically, his own guards poked him with spears until he couldn't be poked anymore. I'm not a military expert or anything, but if you're gonna wage war, you gotta have the money for it. It's kind of like when the ice cream truck comes around and you're counting quarters for a large chocolate cone because you're 12 and life is hard and you deserve it. I love the ice cream truck. Number 8. Red Roman. Emperor Caracalla was also like many other Roman emperors, as he was quite bloodthirsty, and honestly just a bad dude. He unalived his brother Gaeta just because he didn't like him. Good reason, I guess. Then 20,000 of his brother's followers persecuted and killed. When some good folks heard about this terrible news, and were horrified, rightfully so, I mean who wouldn't be, they too were dealt with in a non-YouTube conduct safe way. He depleted the treasury from war and let foreigners have Roman citizenship. Now I know that sounds like a good thing, but it isn't. In already trying times, it completely messed up Roman societal culture. In a sense, fire is good. It allows us many things. But Caracalla threw a whole jerry can of gasoline on the fire by doing that. When your society is built on one thing, perhaps it's a good idea to not totally flip that upside down overnight, as quick decisions like that lead to quick downfalls. Just saying though, just saying.
Number 7. Cesare and disease. The apple didn't fall far from the tree, especially in the case of Cesare Borgia. Though he wasn't Alexander's favorite son, he was loved dearly ever still. Just like his father, Cesare was prone to indulgence and was quite the ladies' man, but unlucky for many people in Europe at the time, syphilis was basically everywhere. It was a big deal. It was just a matter of time before the terrible disease caught up with him. Precisely who gave it to him is unknown, but historians believe they know when he got it. In the summer of 1497, at the ripe age of 22, he was sent by his father to Naples to broker a marriage for his sister Lucrezia. Naples was full of brothels and ripe with disease. At the time, it seemed no one could escape the disease, as was the result for Cesare. The disease would show up in sweeping cankers, sores, and the skin would be eaten away, sometimes to the bone. This was the case for Cesare, who eventually had to wear a mask to disguise the scars the disease had caused.
Number 6. In the family. Like many traditional royal families, they like to keep everything tight, keep everything close together, a little too close some would say. Marriages were arranged, you had to marry your own family member, and on top of that, so many of these dudes in history just cheated and partied while the wives gave birth and tended to house duties. It was bullshit. For Italy's original crime family, they kept everything also a little too close. One of the bigger scandals surrounding them was Lucrezia and Cesare doing the dirty. Her first husband, Giovanni Forza, made these claims first. He actually said Lucrezia was getting it on with her brother and father. Yuck and yuck. 2 yucks for the price of 1 yuck. She was named after the Roman noble woman Lucretia, so this rumor is a pretty ironic one, if true. Most of these rumors came from their enemies, of course, but many have noted that Cesare's intentions to take out Lucretia's husbands had to come from somewhere. This really does sound like Game of Thrones, eh? Wow. I'm on season 4, no spoilers.
Number 5, the death of Juan Borgia. One of the darkest and most mysterious events of the Borgias is the cold case involving Juan Borgia. On June 14th, 1497, Juan Borgia was seen leaving a dinner party at his mother's home. After dinner, he sent his companions and his brothers off on a mysterious errand. He had a habit of wandering the streets of Rome in the evening, and his brothers thought, he was just like gonna meet some cool lady. But as I mentioned, he was Alexander's favorite son, so when a day passed, he got worried. On the 16th, a timber merchant came forward and said that on the night of the disappearance, he was waiting for a shipment on the Tiber River. He saw a man with a white horse approach with the body slung over the horse. The 4 men threw the body into the river and threw rocks at it until it sank. Pope Alexander VI immediately had the river searched, and sure enough, they pulled Juan's body from the waves. He was fully clothed with his coin purse still fully attached, ruling out robbery and implying an assassin. Alexander was inconsolable, but the investigation stopped suddenly, implying they discovered who it was and could do nothing about it. The 2 loudest suspects were his very own brothers, Cesare and Joffrey, each having their own jealousies, which provided strong motive.
Number 4, a cold death. Cesare Borgia passed away March 12, 1507. He was in the woods near Vienna, and he was actually on his way to suppress a rebellion against his own brother-in-law, King John. Now, it was terrible weather that day, so what happened was Cesare left town thinking his men were following him, but in reality they actually bailed. They turned around. Yeah, thunderstorms on a horse, they're like, no, pass, obviously. I don't even drive when it's raining. I'm like, nope. Subsequently, he was surrounded by his enemy and was stabbed to death. But the thing is, those men were ordered to capture Cesare alive, but because of the storm, and it was dark, and the fact that he was all alone, they didn't realize that this was him. His armor was brought back to Cesare's squire, and that's when reality sadly sunk in.
Number 3, Senate Purge.
I am the Senate,
said Tiberius, knowing that he had a really cool name. While not the worst emperor on this list, he did purge the Senate in times of political unrest, just like everyone's favorite space emperor and one of my worst impressions. He wasn't a popular choice for the job, as he really only came to power through a series of misfortunes. All of this leads to a lackluster leader who, when he retired to an island off the coast of Italy, rewarded his mediocre work with some stuff to do with younger people that I just can't say on YouTube. Apparently, he became a heavy drinker and got himself involved in all kinds of vices. It is speculated that Emperor Caligula was a child on this island and may have witnessed this debauchery. It's speculated that this may have influenced his acts of sin, and honestly not sure what to call, as these guys are, I don't know what you call this, these guys are all messed up, man, I don't know, they're just crazy. Number 2, no holidays. Septimus Severus sounds like a brothel-related disease in the Harry Potter universe. But actually, he was a traditional guy. He liked things Roman and wanted to keep it that way. So, when the Jewish and Christian faith made their way to Rome, he wasn't a happy guy. So he had them persecuted. The only thing saving these people from a short Roman sword was if they worshipped the emperor and the emperor gods as well. For some reason, that made him a little more forgiving. However, considering he wasn't the only emperor to feel this way, I would think again before decorating a Christmas tree or lighting a menorah in Rome. Of course, I'm only making humor of what probably was an awful time for those religious factions. We like to romanticize Rome, but she's not all perfect. Number 1, eye for an eye. Empress Irene of the Eastern Roman Empire may have been a woman, but was just as ruthless and bloodthirsty as her male counterparts. While a lot of people probably had an issue with her leading as a woman, I'd like to hope more people today have a problem with her politics and how she came to power. A little unaliving here, cozying up over there, playing the game until she got what she wanted. And there was this one time that she wasn't too happy with her son's politics, and it was likely he was going to have her power removed, so he needed to go on a timeout. She had some guards gouge his eyes out, which mortally wounded him. No big deal or anything. I guess there was no timeout corner back then. I went to Rome to the chief's palace. He bestowed upon me this wisdom after learning about Irene. That ain't it.